Baptists That Amish Chick. Let's get into it.
Have you ever needed to stop and take a pause, or maybe even rushed into things and went, ugh, I wish I would have taken a pause? We are going to talk about just that today. We're talking about practicing the pause because it's something that's very relevant in the three of our lives right now that we've really been experiencing, and something I know I personally have even tried to practice over the last several years, growing in relationships. We just came off of Friendship Month. So even within friendships, practicing that pause of before I rashly respond or before, anything else happens, practicing the pause, it can fit into so many different areas of our life. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're going to discuss today.
Yeah. I've actually, it's funny that it's not funny. I just think it's interesting that we're doing this today. And this is something I've been going through in my life right now. I'm learning what it looks like to not just rush into things, because I'm a fast mover. Mm-hmm. I have no problem moving fast.
I was going to say, I think that's all three of us.
I love to move fast. And I've really been learning. There's been this highlight in my life of learn how to not always, there's so much value in learning how to slow down and even just not go anywhere sometimes. Just stay where you're at and let things happen the way they're meant to happen. And it's really hard. I've realized how hard it is for me to just just not say anything, or to just stay where I'm at and just think about it, or not respond right away, or whatever the thing is. And it's oh, this is so hard because I'm naturally I can move quick, and and I'm realizing that sometimes when you just keep moving really fast, you miss what you were meant to do, what was meant for you right in front of you, because you just keep right on going and you just completely just go right past the thing, or you miss the thing completely because you're going so fast all the time, and you just you have this value from going quick, and then you miss, you're wait a minute, and then you're all of a sudden over in no man's land, and you're how the hell did I get here? Right. Probably because you were going really fast and you didn't take the time to
turn.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah, that's so true. For me, it's a big thing of attention splitting too. The past several years, it's been a big focus for me is what's actually holding my attention, and realize if you're moving really fast in a lot of things, especially, and I think we do this in especially Christian culture, because as much as we say we're not earning our way to heaven, there's definitely massive performance.
We still do it
thing there. We still are I'll say yes to volunteering for that thing at church and this other thing and this other thing, and then I'll do this sports thing for my kids, and yeah, sure, I can make dinner for your boss tomorrow night, last minute with no groceries in the house. And so I've realized how much attention splitting can really take away from joy in things. It can take away from actually doing things well that you're really supposed to be focusing on. And it can just kind of divide it up, where even if it's not something you're actively having to work on that day or that week or even that month, if it's holding attention, holding space in there, it's just feels like something you're always forgetting. At least for me, it does. And so being able to sometimes be hey, do I need to pause something, can be a good thing to look at and be all right, do I need to pause just and think about things more, or do I need to pause things that are happening in my life as well?
So I like what you said about attention splitting. What do you mean by that? How does that happen? Because I don't think I've ever heard somebody say that, but
so for me, I realized even if I have, multiple things I'm involved in or doing, or say it's hey, I have this course I want to take. I bought this course, and then that's always me. For 3 courses. And then it's oh, I also need to research this thing, but I also need to go and order this other thing, which also requires research. But I've got my business that I'm running. And I've also got to handle this family thing. In your brain, you're holding space for all of the attention on all of those things. Yeah. Whereas, so it's a checklist that's always there hovering over you, where it's almost there's so much to be done where you don't know where to start.
It's the multiple tabs open on the web browser.
Yes, and even if it's something that's oh, it's later on, that course, I actually don't have to start it for 2 months, but it's sitting there, me knowing I have to do it or something, that's holding attention in your brain, and it sucks energy away from everything else that you have to get done. So you can't have that conversation with your sister that you need to have, or your mom, and you can't go ahead and work on that activity you have to prep for the Sunday school class on Sunday or whatever it is, like it pulls attention away and it kind of like sucks your energy dry. At least for me, it does, where because I'm carrying and holding space for attention for way too many things. It's almost like I'm sitting there and it's like the radio's on and the TV's on and someone's on the phone TikTok. And I'm scrolling TikTok.
And someone's talking to you.
Yeah, someone's talking to me when I really only have to engage in that conversation that is here, but like my attention is still split because things are catching
that
my
makes
attention.
So much sense. Wow, like as you were saying that, I was like, oh, that makes sense. And also, and I think sometimes you don't, when you're so good at being on all the time and having all these tabs open, I don't think you always realize how many tabs you actually have open
because you don't know how to close.
Yes, until you take that step back and you practice pausing, and then you're like, oh shit, no wonder I feel tired all the time. You realize, good Lord, I have so many things that I'm thinking about at the same time, all the time. And your brain can't function well that way. We weren't made to have 27 tabs open, right? But we do that. Right. And I think that's why we like that split, what do you call it? Attention splitting. That's why that happens. And like, if we wouldn't pause, could you imagine?
You burn out.
Right.
Yes. You're going to be forced to pause. You're going to pause. You're just going to sometimes be forced into it.
For me, it was like extreme anxiety. Once I realized that that was happening, I was like, oh, I need to actually pause myself right now. Like I'm a big fan of brain dumping, like on a piece of paper.
I was gonna that's a practical thing.
Yeah, I'm like, and I will brain dump. Like, what are all the things that are holding my attention? Well, it's I need to do this, and 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 also I need to clean my house, and also, oh, this needs to be done in the car, and oh, I've been meaning to return this thing to Amazon that's almost like all these things. And it's like, okay, what are some things that actually don't matter that I can just be like scribble it out completely? Like, I actually don't want to do that. I want nothing to do with it. And like, that has been the things that have been the most peace giving, where like I've committed to things, and then like I've had specific times I committed to something and I've done it for a long time. I've technically fulfilled on it, but I just keep going. Like a good example would be like, you're teaching a Sunday school class. You said you do it for 6 months. Well, it's been 9 months now. You're worn out. You're tired. Right. But you're like just staying committed. You're like, oh, it's not that big a deal, not that big a deal, but it's wearing you out.
Who else is going to do it?
Yeah.
Why do you take the responsibility for the whole organization?
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
and you might be staying in a position that someone else is meant to take, but because you can't say no, that person can't actually do their thing they're meant to do. So like, thinking of it that way too is sometimes super helpful to be like, oh, I might be standing in somebody else's way. Let me get out of the way.
Right. But like going through and being like, okay, here's the things I actually need to shut down. And like, here's the thing I actually want to be the focus of my life, or here's my top 3 values. And oh, it's actually my family. So these to-do things actually have to do with my family. Oh, it's my business. Okay, these things actually do have to do with my business. Oh, but also I realize these things have to do with my business, but I can hire them out and I don't need to do them. Or they have to do with my business, but actually I realize they don't make me money in my business. I'm just like doing them as extra things. Like just going through listening, like, what do I actually need right now? Like what is actually needed, and what's going to be most beneficial? Yeah, what's going to be beneficial for what I value most, and going through and like I've done this with my husband too, where I'm like, I get at the whiteboard, I'm like, all right, you're stressed. Let's write it down. Yeah. What don't you want to do? Scratch it out. What's not actually helping with something? Scratch it out. What do you feel like you just are supposed to do? Scratch it. Like, don't return the thing to Amazon. It's $30. It's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're just marketplace it if you really
it's
fine. Like,
well, and I love that so much, because it takes sometimes when you hold things in your brain, they can feel so big and overwhelming. But then when you write it out on paper, you realize, oh, that's really not that big, or that's not, it's just going to take 5 minutes. And here I was holding it in my brain and thinking it was going to take 30 minutes or a day or whatever. And you just, because everything feels so big when you hold it in your head, it actually, you don't have, what's the word I'm looking for? You don't have a real grasp on how much time it will actually take, or, you know, what actually it requires of you, because it's holding space in your brain, and you can't rationalize and see the reality until you put it on paper, and you're like, oh, okay, this doesn't, like you said, then you can logically sort things out. But you can't do that when it's in your brain, right? Because you can't do, like, your brain isn't a piece of paper that you can just write things down. And your brain was, I love this. I don't know where I learned it, but I think it's so true, and it's worked so well for me, is your brain was made to create, not remember.
Dang.
So, but what do we do with our brains? we try to remember all the shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the 20,000 passwords we have, which nobody can do. Well, at least I can. I'm pretty sure.
Right, no.
Like, I'm pretty sure that's a problem for everybody. Where it's like, I don't know what my password is for this.
I'm just reset.
right.
Yeah.
I just reset 3 passwords today. I'm not even kidding. You said that. I'm like, I don't know. It's my face. If you can't read my face on my phone, I don't know what it is. Like, just fix it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't know this, I don't know what it is. And it's not one of the 2 that I use. So
Right.
who knows? I'm like, it's one of the ones that I added some besides an exclamation point or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I got crafty. Dang it.
Oh, gets you in trouble.
I know. Dang it.
Yeah.
So kind of on that, like whenever you're talking about like, I always think I've got so much to do. And so I do the brain dump thing. But something I've started doing is like, okay, realistically, how long does that take me?
Mhm.
5 minutes. And so I'll put a 5. And I'm like, all of these things on my to-do list that I've been putting off for 4 or 5 days because it's so much will literally take me an hour and a half.
Mhm.
Why have I been like,
Yeah.
that's helped me even with like the return the thing to Amazon. Like every once in a while I'm like, okay, logic brain is on.
Mhm.
Let's map this out
Yeah.
so I can move forward. Right.
Mhm.
I number them. Like I'll do a breakup
What
of
priority
priority
Mhm.
first. What needs to be done first. Like it has to be done.
Yeah. And I even do that too. Like, what can I do during nap time while kiddo's sleeping? And I'm like, okay, do those 3 things or, whatever.
Mhm.
Or like, hey, this has to be done at home. This can be done whenever.
Mhm.
And I love rationalizing and like prioritizing like that. Cause I'm like, I do the same thing.
Mhm.
So I have to do, that's the pause that I have to take for me.
Right.
Just for my sanity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But there was actually something we all, I think it was towards the beginning of us recording starting the podcast and all the things, we all went, we are so busy. We have so much to do. And there was a post that it was like, a little girl said, I want to be like an astronaut or something like that. And they're like, well, you got to study really hard. You got to go to college and you've got to graduate and do da 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 da. And she was like, well, that's just 3 things.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I love that too.
Yeah.
I love that she, it's almost like she lives in the pause. Like,
Yeah.
okay. Like that's 3 things. Like, sure, each thing might take a while, but that's just 3.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love like when you have that second to pause and you take a step back, even if that pause is 5 seconds, whether that pause is a week or
Mhm.
5
Right.
months or whatever, like that pause is so important.
Yeah. And I like that because I think sometimes as you were talking, I was listening and you reminded me of the fact that sometimes we feel like we don't have time to take a pause. I can't
Absolutely.
afford to take this pause. I can't afford this. It feels like you're wasting time, especially if you are a type A personality or you are somebody who likes to get shit done.
Mhm.
And you're like, you love progress. You love to see things happen and watch, like it just lights you up when you can just see the progress happening. And then you feel like taking a pause is going to be going backwards
Mhm.
or it's going to just be wasting time and look all the things I could have done if I wouldn't have taken a pause. But you can't afford to not take a pause.
Right.
When you take a pause in anything in your life, it makes you more, it helps you rest, first of all, because think about the greatest performers in this world, athletes, even like a lion, taking the lion, for example, they sleep 20 some hours a day. But when they do their thing, it gets done. Like when they are highly productive, right? And the reason they're highly productive is because they take a pause. They don't try to go hunt in the middle of the day. It's freaking hot and nothing's moving. Why the hell would they just keep moving? Because it makes them feel good and more productive.
Yeah.
Then they don't have any energy when the time actually comes at night when things are moving and they're going to be exhausted and then they can't, like, they're just going to die that way. They're going to starve. They're going to burn out, right? Literally. And so if you think about all the high producers in whatever, whether it's animals or
like entertainers.
Yes, exactly. Like everybody takes a pause. You have to. Like that is the way that you get filled back up. You find things, the cracks or the holes that need to like be patched up or be taken care of. You find the things that, wait a minute, I've been putting so much energy in this and it's actually not doing anything for me. Let me stop doing that. But if you wouldn't pause, you would just keep pouring that energy out into things that aren't actually serving you. And the pause actually does so much for you. You can't afford not to take one. And I just thought about it. I was like, I think for a lot of people, it feels like you can't, especially in a world where it's just like so chaotic sometimes, and everything's just busy and going.
Well, and if you're not
like,
moving, like, then what are you doing?
yeah, people are like,
it's
what are
the
you
judgment,
doing?
right?
Yes, yeah. Yeah. And but then you look at people who are tired and burnt out and exhausted, and you look at their life. What's actually happening in their life?
It's true.
Really?
Sometimes you're like, what do they actually do with their life? What do they do with their time? Yeah.
It's just a bunch of hamsters running on a wheel, and the faster they run, the more the wheel goes around, but they don't go a damn
They don't go
place.
Yeah.
Right.
And so on that note, there's somebody, if you guys haven't heard of Vic Blends, he's a guy on Instagram, and he's one of my favorite people because he asks people, hey, he's a barber, and he just stops people. It's like, hey, can I give you a haircut? Usually it's guys. And while he's giving them a haircut, he asks them all these cool questions, right? And he
Like
meets
deep
them
stuff. Yeah.
deep stuff, and he meets some pretty cool people that you wouldn't even like. You miss sometimes the cool people in life because they're
because you see a person just walking down the street.
Yeah.
And how often do you, I feel like he's even one that practices the pause of like, they have a story and I want to find out more.
Yeah. And he takes,
and I'm going to do it by serving them.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes, I know.
Anyway, go ahead.
And he picks the people who are oftentimes who look like they need it the most, like people who look like they might be homeless, or people who are just having a hard day, or you can just tell that they're not doing well, maybe, or and it's not always those people, but he has such a heart for those people. And he said on Threads yesterday or the day before, whenever I saw it, I was like, this is so good, because it goes with this thing about practicing the pause. He said, you got to be okay with taking 2 steps back sometimes. That awareness is why the next 10 steps forward will happen. And I love that so much.
That's good.
That awareness. I love that he used that, because in the pause, I think there's so much in your awareness that your awareness grows.
You can reconnect to it.
Yes. And you can become aware of what's actually happening instead of what's going on up here in your head, because you're just busy and going all the time.
And I think that pause is always so important in that awareness, like being intentional with it, not just sitting there twiddling your thumbs going, I can't wait till I can move again. Can't wait till I can move again. I've got so much to do. Like, what's the awareness of like, hey, what's important to me? What are my priorities? Who are my priorities? Like why is this pause happening? What do I need right now? Like, I was actually talking to a friend last weekend, and he was like, it's one of those things. It's kind of like, I called it my selfish season. And I was like, yeah, like sometimes it feels that way, practicing a pause. And especially if it's something really personal, like where you just kind of step back.
Which on that note, we have an episode on selfishness and selflessness.
Yes. Right.
So if you're like selfishness, go check out that episode.
Yes. But I mean, and he goes, some of those times are like the best that I look back on, because they did so much. It's literally the 2 steps back to set up the next 10. Now, in that pause, like, are you just focused on the next 10 steps? Because is that really a pause?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes. And often there's
things
things
hard to set stuff down and leave it down.
Exactly. And there's often things you're meant to learn in the pause, that if you just are focused on, I can't wait to get out of this, you completely miss why you were supposed to do it in the first place, right? Because you're so focused on getting on, just waiting for it to end, instead of what am I supposed to learn in this? And what's in this for me? Because there's always something for you in every season of your life. There's never a season that's a waste or of your time or your energy or whatever. You just have to ask the right question, ask questions about it. And often it's a question of, what do I need to learn in this? Why is this happening for me? Or what is happening for me in this? And when you ask yourself those questions, you get a lot of clarity, and then you can actually engage with it and work through it and get what you were meant to get in that. So, yeah. Anyway.
That's good. I love that. I thought we made so many good points so far.
Yeah.
We're doing great, aren't we, guys? No,
Sounds good.
But on this note,
Yes.
we do want to let all of you know that we are actually going to practice what we're preaching, right? And we're not preaching, we're just discussing, testing and discussing. But we are actually going to practice that pause for the next several months. We all three have very big things going on personally and professionally, and we need to take that time to be intentional so that we are stewarding everything well, because we've all got businesses, we've got this podcast, we've got our own lives and health, and we've got family and a lot of different things that are just kind of at play. And so by practicing the pause and taking that step back from the podcast itself for a little bit, we want to be intentional, and we want to let you guys know we don't want to just disappear. We want you guys to know what is going on, and invite you to practice the pause as well, because it's been I know we've kind of been in this little bit of a slow pause, we're coming up, we're rolling to a stop, what I mean?
Dwindling.
But so much has already come of it, and it's been so beneficial, I think, all three of us individually. And even together, right? I think a lot has come out of practicing this pause. And so we want to just be transparent and let you guys know, hey, for the next little while, we are going to be stepping back, and there won't be weekly episodes. Now, of course, you can always go back and catch up on all of our past episodes.
Share them with your
we've
friends.
got, we've got about 40 episodes out there. You can follow us, keep following us on social media, because between that and the email list, if you're not on those things, definitely get on those, because as soon as we're back, we're excited for that, that day to come. But right now we're focusing on those 2 steps back, so that those next 10 can be really great.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't just include the podcast. It includes a lot of things.
Yes,
so,
I really think that it's so necessary for us to do this. And it can feel, counterproductive. It doesn't feel like that to me, but I can, and in the beginning I was like, wait a minute, we need to keep going. And then I was like, no, we don't actually, because if something isn't evolving and changing, it's not alive. And so everything that's alive is always changing and growing and evolving. And if it's not, it's probably dead or about to die. And so I think that when we come back, whenever that is, because we don't know.
No.
We don't have this is when we're coming back. When we come back, it will be different people. Better, upgraded people.
You're not getting 3 different people. You're still getting Stephanie in Berlin.
Yes.
But we're changing as individuals.
Yeah.
Growing as individuals.
I mean, we're cool already, but I think we're going to be so much cooler. And obviously, not that we're not great now, we'll just be greater. So yeah, I was thinking about this today, what a ride this has been with you guys, and it's been so fun. I love, Berlin, that you had this idea. If it wasn't,
I'm so glad you take showers.
More showers. But if you would have had the idea and messaged us, this probably wouldn't have happened, really. I mean, I don't know.
And it's brought out so many great discussions. And I realized how many, it's amazing to me the number of people that are even so much older than us, that our conversations have helped. And our conversations that we've had people come to us that are hey, I went back to my adult daughters and had conversations with them about
that was one of my favorite conversations.
Things that I could have done better in parenting. We've had people that are much older than us come and be like, hey, how do I handle this situation? I want to grow in this. We've had people younger, we've had all over the board, but it's also created conversations in us that's brought us all closer. So that's even a thing for you guys. If you heard an episode, or maybe it's your first episode you're hearing, I don't know. And you're this really resonates, send it to a friend that will listen to it, have a conversation about it, because there's so much closeness and friendship. We just finished friendship month, right? There's so much more closeness in our friendship because we know what is similar, not just the jokes that we can make, because we all know we all get them now. But it's it's also oh, we've all had these like same experiences, and here's how we've healed from them, and we can like find things in each other in a good way. We're like, hey, you seem triggered by this thing, like, you know,
what's going on?
And so it's like it brings out so much in you with having these conversations with your friends. And you understand more about yourself, about your friends, what you need to work on, what you may want to change in your family going forward, or in generations, of just people that you know.
Yeah.
And so it can be really impactful.
Yeah. And just all the messages you guys have sent us of what the podcast has done for you guys, or things that you've resonated with. It is so incredibly encouraging when we hear from you guys about what this podcast is doing for you, because we put a lot of energy into it, because we love it. First of all, we've enjoyed it so much, or at least I have, and I know pretty sure you all have as well.
She's like,
Nobody has been
drunk
drunk.
Yeah.
But it's just like the messages we get and the emails we get that like make me cry, because I'm like, oh my gosh, you just never know what happens when you do something that's put in your head or heart to do. You don't know the impact it's going to have on people. And like, do that thing, go for it. If there's something that's been inside of you that's like, I really want to do it. There's a reason that it's coming to you, because it needs you to do it. Like you were chosen to do that thing because you have what it takes. It's your voice or your action or the way you do it is needed to reach people. And I think we don't always realize the importance of that. We just we kind of like, oh, whatever, or at least I do that. And so thank you guys so much for coming along on this journey with us. We've so enjoyed it. And we're really excited for this break, this pause. And we can't wait to come back whenever that is. And with however that will be, And so in the meantime, like, stay connected with us on social media and emails. And but there may be some sporadic posting. I don't know, like if we feel inspired to like share something with you guys as far as like social media posting goes, I'm sure we'll do that. And that's all I have to say. I love you guys so much. I'm so glad you're here with us.
Yeah, these conversations that actually like helped me learn what I even think, right? Because there were things that I had never thought through, but to be able to like have this conversation with my friends, but it benefit so many other people has been so amazing. And so this is a little bittersweet. I'm not gonna lie. Sarah.
Our Butterchurn era. Actually, this Butterchurn era.
The first one.
Yes, the first
Butterchurn era. Yes. But you guys, we have thoroughly enjoyed this, and we want to encourage you guys to practice the pause as well, so that you can grow and become the best version of yourself as well.
Yeah.
And on that note, we will see you.
See you.
Bye, guys.